Starting off, if you enjoyed today's content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing this content. It really helps out small channels like mine. All right, welcome back to Command Priority. Today I have a deck tech on my Teval list. Someone commented and asked to see it, and so I'm happy to put it on here for you. So Teval is 1 and Sultai for a flying 4/4 and it says whenever Teval attacks, mill 3 cards, and you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. So I know I've seen some lists that are landfall based with Teval. I'm doing more of a self mill and then taking stuff out of my graveyard if needed in mass to create a bunch of tokens. And I have a few ways of doing that. So starting with creatures, I have the Gitrog monster in it. Death Touch, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster and lets you sacrifice a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever one or more lands cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. Got Deathrot Shaman, just for value. A really great card in here that came in the precon that I love to hit in this is Colossal Grave Reaver. It's a 8 mana 7/6 with flying, and it says whenever this creature enters or attacks, mill 3 cards. Whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put one of them onto the battlefield. Ice Till Explorer is great in here for playing an additional land and then playing lands from your graveyard, and also for the self-mill. Nyx Weaver here is great for a recursion piece and for mill. So at the beginning, it has reach. 1, a black and a green for a 2/3 with reach, and at the beginning of your upkeep, mill 2 cards. And then 1, a black and a green, exile this creature, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Karu Goldkeeper is great from Tarkir Dragonstorm. 1 and Sultai for a flying 3/3. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard during your turn, create a treasure token. That'll be important later. And then 2 and Sultai, exile this card from your graveyard, put 2 1/1 counters and a flying counter on target creature, activate only as a sorcery. I've never actually used that, but the card's still great. Eternal Witness for more recursion to get something back in my hand. Stinkweed Imp as a good blocker, since anything that it deals combat damage to, it will destroy it. And then mill for dredge 5. Tormund the Desecrator is a payoff because for all this mill and stuff and getting rid of stuff, because whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So if he's out and Teval's out, on Teval's trigger, I return a land to the battlefield tapped. I'll then create a 2/2 druid zombie, and then also just a 2/2 black zombie. Diviner of Mists, 4 and a blue for a flying 4/5. Whenever this creature attacks, mill 4 cards. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard with mana value 4 or less without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. It's actually really good in here for the pieces that I'm, need to find. It's been pretty handy. Muldrotha is just Muldrotha. It's great. It's a great commander all by itself, obviously, and it does really good stuff in here. 6 for more mill and also being able to replay something from your graveyard because it gives your non-land permanent cards in your graveyard retrace. Mossborn Hydra, just because even though this isn't built strictly around landfall or anything, it can have more than 1 or 2 lands come in a turn, so it gets big quick. Same reason for Avenger of Zendikar, just making tokens, which does come important later in this. Runap Excavator, you may play lands from your graveyard. Timeless Witness, just another Eternal Witness effect to get something back that I need. Tatiova for card draw. Sidisi just as another really great Sultai commander in here that also mills and then also makes me more 2/2 zombies. Stitcher Supplier for mill. Sorry, I didn't realize that had such a bad glare. Stitcher Supplier for mill. Hedron Crab for mill. Delighted Halfling just for a mana dork and for legendaries so they can't be countered. Birds of Paradise as a mana dork, obviously. Aftermath Analyst for mill, but then also if I've milled a bunch of lands, then I can get them all back. There is payoffs in here for lands, but it's still not the main strategy here. And then, of course, AC Tyrant of Gyre Strait. 4 green and a blue. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. These are the creatures that this deck revolves around. I will keep a few out here as for things that are relevant coming up. A ton of basics, and I don't run any blue basics, actually. I've got 4 forests, 4 swamps, and then Command Tower, Hinterland Harbor, Rejuvenating Springs, Misty Rainforest, Watery Grave, Verdant Catacombs, Dreamroot Cascade, Zagoth Triumph for all colors, Overgrown Tomb, Llanowar Wastes, Command Beacon, Thakmore Salvage for the combo with Gitrog, Undergrowth Stadium, Polluted Delta, Morphic Pool, Woodland Cemetery, Breeding Pool, and then we get into the few that are more special here for doing what we need to do. Yavimai, Cradle of Growth for turning everything into forests. Same thing with Urborg for turning everything into swamps. You've got the 3 duels here in Bayou, Tropical Island, and Underground Sea. Gaia's Cradle for making a bunch of mana with all the tokens that we hope to make. Shifting Woodland for being able to make it turn into something that's in my graveyard when I really needed it. Field of the Dead, just in case I get enough lands out to make more tokens. And then Alchemist's Refuge for flash. Being able to cast stuff as though they had flash is really handy. So that's the mana base. Let's see, we'll do sorceries next. Got Ramp and 3 visits, Nature's Lore, Farseek, Open the Way. You've got some recursion for lands, and then mill and Life from the Loam. Way to get a bunch of creatures back on the battlefield. And Afterlife from the Loam, which is great. Some recursion and Balagad recovery and a land when needed. Reanimate and Victimize are great in here for, obviously we're milling, so we put something in the graveyard that we want to have or we need to have. You can get it back that way. And then Finale of Devastation. Finale of Devastation is one of the ways that the deck can win, is if I can make enough tokens of either zombies or plants or whatever may have you, then being able to cast Finale for a bunch and then just trampling over my opponents. Leave that out. There are a few creatures that I set aside that I haven't listed yet, but they were purely for the way the deck wins, so I'm holding them till later. Instance. Entomb for getting something in there in the graveyard that I need. Crop Rot for finding Gaia's Cradle. Oriole Procession for returning a card from my graveyard to my hand. Gifts Ungiven, just for a tutor that's good, and then the stuff I'm not getting that my opponents don't choose, they go to the graveyard, which is not bad for a graveyard deck, obviously. Worldly Tutor for finding a creature I need. Noxious Revival is more recursion to put something back on top of my library so I can get it when I need it. A couple counter spells and Swan Song and an offer you can't refuse. Board Disruption and Cyclonic Rift. Spot Removal and Assassin's Trophy. And then you have a Dark Ritual and a Smuggler's Surprise for mill, for putting creatures into play that I don't have quite enough mana to do, and then for protection, because the +1 at the bottom is creatures you control power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Artifacts, your usual Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and then a Crucible of the Worlds to play lands from my graveyard in case I mill them and aren't drawing them. Head Shredder, just putting lands into play when they enter my graveyard. And then Phyrexian Altar and Altar of Dementia. Both of these are kind of win cons that I'll explain later. Enchantments, more mill and Ripples of Undeath. Got Dance of the Dead and Animate Dead to get a creature out that I need. Phyrexian Reclamation for getting stuff back out of my graveyard to my hand, or for triggering Teval by getting stuff out of my graveyard. It'll trigger and make a 2/2 black zombie druid. Teval's Judgment, great for going with something like this. That way I can get at least one, if not more, of those triggers every turn or every one of my turns. Mystic Remora for card draw. I don't have Rhystic Study in here. It probably should be, but just decided not to. Torture's Existence for being able to get stuff out of my graveyard as I need to, and for triggers to make more druids. And then a couple important ones. Titan's Nest and Insidious Roots. So Insidious Roots is a black and a green. Creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, which is great because my plan, the main plan, is to make as many tokens as I can. And then whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 0/1 green plant creature token, then put a 1/1 counter on each plant you control. So it creates tokens, it can buff tokens, and it also makes them tap for mana. I just need a way to get stuff out of my graveyard, which this deck is great at. Titan's Nest is 1 in Sultai for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard, which is good, but the other part is what's really important. Exile a card from your graveyard, add colorless. Spend this mana only to cast a colored spell without X in its mana value. So being able to exile cards from my graveyard to make mana and trigger Teval is great. And finally, I mentioned Phyrexian Altar, Altar of Dementia, Crop Rotation, Finale Devastation, Keru Goldkeeper, but then I left these 4 out, which are Obnixilis the Fallen, Sir Conrad the Grim, Warren Soul Trader, and then Gravecrawler. So you can imagine I'm going to be able to do the Gravecrawler loop of sacking Gravecrawler to Phyrexian Altar, making a mana, and recasting Gravecrawler, which is the able to go infinite way of doing it. It's kind of in here for a break glass. The way I like to do it is not the way that's infinite, and it's with Warren Soul Trader, where it's essentially the same thing, but I'm having to pay life to do it to create a treasure token. So I can only kind of make it happen if I have enough life. I have had to use the Phyrexian Altar one time where I just didn't have enough life. I don't know, I forget how much it was, maybe like 5 points or something that I just couldn't. But that is one way the deck wins, is either through this with Gravecrawler, or with Warren Soul Trader and Gravecrawler, or with, say, Altar of Dementia, if you have enough mana, being able to sack stuff to it. Sir Conrad's another one, because every time a creature dies or a creature card is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each opponent. Obnixilis is kind of a pseudo way to win. If you can get enough lands with him in play, I mean, target player is going to lose 3 life. It's usually better in if you're down to a 1v1 and you can do something like Aftermath Analyst and put all the lands you've been milling this whole time into play, triggering him a bunch of times and kill that last person. There's always still making a bunch and then Finale Devastating. This is good just because as you are moving, say, Gravecrawler in and out of the graveyard, this is going to be creating an extra treasure token. So you're going to use your mana, say it's with Phyrexian Altar. You'll sack him, use the mana, recast him, but then when it leaves the graveyard, Keru Goldkeeper is going to make an extra mana. So you're making extra mana in that fashion. But if you have Insidious Roots and Titan's Nest, so this is going to create an infinite amount of 0/1 green tokens, basically, and you're going to add a 1/1 counter to each plant each time you're doing it. So you're making one and buffing it each time. So as you're doing this, if you didn't have, say, Sir Conrad out, that way he wasn't dealing damage, then you could still be sacking Gravecrawler, recasting, making an extra mana, and then making an infinite army of 0/1s that are going to be buffed to oblivion to swing with. And what you're going to hope to be able to have in hand or be able to mill over is going to be a Finale of Devastation, so that then you can do something like casting an Eternal Witness, get the Finale back out of your graveyard to your hand, and then using enough of your creatures that can tap because they don't have Summoning Sickness to then be able to cast the Finale of Devastation for a bunch, or with the, I guess, the possible infinite treasures that you would have from Keru Goldkeeper, and give them all haste and kill your opponents that way. The deck is a lot of fun. It's kind of like a little puzzle that has to be put together each game. It has enough ways of winning through either straight up combat damage combo or a pseudo combo that requires a lot of milling and hitting the right stuff, and then being able to have the right piece in your hand at the time, or being able to get it back from the graveyard. That's why there's so much of stuff like Muldrotha. That way I can play permanents from the graveyard. That way if I mill over an Eternal Witness, I can recast that. Or if I mill over a Timeless Witness, I can recast that. There's plenty of instances where I have had the Muldrotha out, been able to cast one of these, needed another piece, been able to sack Muldrotha, make mana, then play something like Reanimate or even Victimize, bring Muldrotha back. Well, if I had to Victimize, I would do it, but say I just had a Reanimate, then I could reanimate the Muldrotha and be able to recast the Timeless Witness or the Eternal Witness, since it's less mana, and that gets me my Muldrotha back, which then lets me get another card out that I need, being able to do that. And it's a deck that's never really out, because you're playing a graveyard deck and you have a lot of recursion, and so it's a lot of fun. If anybody's interested, let me move these over here so Keru Goldkeeper and Insidious Roots can be seen without the glare. I'm going to figure that out one of these days. But if anybody's interested, I have linked the deck list in the description. If you enjoyed today's content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing this content. It really helps out small channels like mine.